The box was hidden where I never looked, tucked behind old tax files in a winter coat that still smelled like cedar and last year's snow. I wasn't searching for secrets that afternoon. I was looking for a birth certificate, something ordinary, something safe. Instead, I found a stack of letters tied with a faded blue ribbon, the paper worn soft as skin. My girlfriend's handwriting covered every page, familiar and intimate, looping the way her smile curved when she laughed. And every letter was addressed to the same name, a name that wasn't mine. In that quiet moment, with dust floating through the sunlight and my heart beginning to pound in my ears, I realized the life I thought I knew was already cracking beneath my feet. Before the weight of this story settles in, let me ask you something. If you believe in kindness, in forgiveness, and in the power of second chances, take a moment to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps stories like this alive, stories that remind us we're not alone in our broken moments. I had always thought of us as steady, the kind of couple people pointed to when they talked about real love. We met in our late 20s in a small coffee shop in Portland, both hiding from a rainstorm that soaked the city in gray. She had ordered the same drink as me, laughed at the coincidence, and something about that small shared moment felt like fate. Over the years, our life grew in the quiet ways that felt solid and dependable. Sunday mornings meant pancakes and vinyl records. Weeknights meant takeout and half-finished shows we promised to finish someday. I trusted her the way you trust gravity, without thinking twice. That trust was why the letters felt so violent when I read them, like discovering the ground had been hollow all along. The letters weren't rushed notes or careless messages. They were thoughtful, patient, deeply emotional. She wrote about longing, about memories I wasn't part of, about a connection that had survived time and distance. She described moments of warmth, shared dreams, and a love that felt unfinished. The man she wrote to lived in another state, someone from her past, someone she claimed was only a chapter she'd closed long before we met. Yet here he was, alive in ink and paper, breathing between every line she wrote. With each letter, my chest tightened, not just from betrayal, but from confusion. There was no bitterness in her words, no guilt. There was tenderness, and that scared me more than anger ever could. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I carried the knowledge alone, like a stone in my pocket. I watched her make dinner, watched her brush her hair before bed, listened to her talk about her day. Every smile felt borrowed, every touch felt uncertain. I started questioning my own memories, replaying moments and wondering what was real and what had been shared with someone else in her heart. Nights grew longer. Sleep came in fragments. I found myself staring at the ceiling, wondering how two people could live in the same space while standing in completely different emotional worlds. The hardest part wasn't imagining her with another man. It was realizing how invisible I felt. Those letters held parts of her soul I had never touched, parts she hadn't trusted me with. I began to doubt my worth, wondering if I had been a placeholder, a safe harbor, while her heart remained anchored elsewhere. I stopped laughing as easily. I grew quieter at work. Friends noticed the change, but I brushed it off, not ready to admit how deeply I was unraveling. Betrayal doesn't always arrive with chaos. Sometimes it slips in softly and rearranges everything without making a sound. When I finally told her what I found, the room felt smaller, like the walls were leaning in to listen. She didn't deny the letters. She didn't get angry. Instead, she looked tired, as if she had been carrying a secret for too long and was relieved it was finally out. She explained that the man was someone she loved years before, someone she never fully healed from. The letters were her way of saying goodbye, a slow, painful attempt to release feelings she didn't know how to confront. She insisted there was no physical betrayal, no recent contact beyond the letters. But emotional truth is heavier than physical facts, and her explanation didn't erase the ache sitting between us. I asked myself questions that had no easy answers. Was love still real if it shared space with unresolved feelings? Could commitment survive emotional infidelity? I wanted to walk away, to protect myself from further pain. Yet I also saw her fear, her regret, and the honesty trembling beneath her calm exterior. Love doesn't disappear the moment it's wounded. It lingers, complicated and bruised, asking to be understood rather than abandoned. We decided to pause, not break, but breathe. I moved into a small apartment across town, a place with thin walls and unfamiliar sounds. Alone, I began confronting parts of myself I had ignored. I realized how much of my identity had been built around being needed, being the steady one. Without her presence, I was forced to ask who I was beyond the relationship. I started running in the mornings, feeling my lungs burn as if they were clearing out months of held breath. I wrote in a journal at night, pouring out anger, sadness, and fear until the pages felt lighter than my chest. Healing didn't come all at once. It arrived in brief moments of clarity, followed by waves of doubt. She reached out slowly, respectfully, giving me space while still showing she was willing to fight for us. She went to therapy, confronting her past instead of romanticizing it on paper. I could see the effort, the discomfort of growth. Trust, once cracked, doesn't magically repair itself. It demands patience, vulnerability, and the courage to hear things that hurt. We met occasionally, not as lovers, but as two people learning how to be honest. There were tears. There were silences that spoke louder than words. But there was also something new forming between us, a rawness that felt more real than the comfort we'd lost. Over time, I began to understand that the letters weren't about replacing me. They were about her unfinished grief, her fear of letting go of who she used to be. That understanding didn't excuse the pain she caused, but it gave it context. Forgiveness, I learned, isn't a single decision. It's a daily choice to release resentment, even when it feels justified. I wasn't sure where our story would end, but I knew I didn't want to let bitterness define me. Months passed and slowly trust began to rebuild, not as something automatic, but as something earned. We talked openly about boundaries, about fears, about the quiet needs we'd both ignored. I learned to speak up instead of assuming strength meant silence. She learned that love requires full presence, not emotional leftovers. The past didn't vanish, but it stopped controlling our future. In its place grew a deeper respect, a love shaped by honesty rather than illusion. Just before this story reaches its end, I want to ask you something personal. If you've ever faced betrayal, confusion, or heartbreak, leave a comment right now. Share your experience even briefly. Your words might be the comfort someone else scrolling through needs tonight. Looking back, I sometimes think about that box in the closet and how close I came to never finding it. Discovery shattered my comfort, but it also forced growth neither of us could have reached otherwise. Love isn't proven by perfection. It's revealed by what we're willing to confront, forgive, and rebuild. Whether our relationship lasts forever or simply taught us how to love better, it changed me. It taught me that self-worth doesn't depend on being chosen over someone else, but on choosing yourself even when it's hard. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that healing is possible even after trust is broken, please take a moment to like, comment, and share this video. Your engagement helps stories like this reach people who are quietly hurting, people who need to know that pain doesn't have to be the end of the story. Sometimes it's just the beginning of becoming stronger, wiser, and more human than we ever were before.